Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming back from lunch. And what a powerful session we've had this morning. Yesterday was also phenomenal, and it's been just a recharging event for me so far. And I'm happy that you guys are here with us to join in this experience. So I'm going to start with the greeting. Bojo Iguyen, Chikiga Bad Nishna Bad Dijnoswin, Joshua Arce Dejnakas, Chegwax Damyewa, Skodani Bodwadmi Mina Dao, Chewan Mowin Dubyadon, Bodwadmi Mine Gigago Nok Gegwan. So what I said was greetings and thank you. Shigiga Ba is my Indian name. Joshua Arce is what I'm called. It means bad thunder. I am Thunder Clan. I am Potawatomi, and I bring happiness from where Potawatomi and Kickapoo people are from. And so as I was reflecting on our time here and being together with my guests, we wanted to make sure we paid some acknowledgement or some awareness to the land of the First Nations people where we are. And this is the traditional homelands of many tribal nations, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa, Chickasha, Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashe, Wea, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Muscatine, Illinois, Sac-and-Fox, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, and Miami. So I appreciate all the awareness that we have and the honoring that we do with the lands we're on and many generations that have been here before us, and even up to the current generations that we are in now. Again, my name is Joshua Arce. I'm President and CEO for Partnership with Native Americans. We're one of the largest national Native nonprofits serving Indian country. We have a warehouse and distribution center in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Rapid City, South Dakota. And from there, we have a hub and spoke model and a 9-state footprint, 6 pillars of service, 2 arms of work. So it's a very complex and complicated work that we do in the nonprofit space, but we've been around for 30 years. And so it's been an exciting work, and I'd be remiss not to point out my major gifts officer, Shane Smith. I think he might be over there on the side if anybody wants to talk with him afterwards. I'm also joined by Amanda Smith, who is the president of the Native American Business Association. She is also the owner of Mahua Industries, a citizen of the First Nations of Canada. And Rachel Salinas, president of IK, the Intertribal Council of AT&T Employees, citizen of the Lipan Apache. She also serves on the Board of Trustees for Texas Native Health, and she actually is responsible for putting on an amazing powwow in downtown Dallas in November. So if you're around those parts that time of the year, I strongly encourage you to come and see the urban Native experience live and in action. So welcome to both of my guests. We wanted to get into talking about these discussion questions and considering some of the challenges our communities are facing, be that around jobs, education, mental health, physical mental health, other environmental challenges. Amanda, can you share a bit about the specific work you were doing today and how that work plays into the larger overall context of empowering Indigenous communities?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. You know what our organization, we are based in Texas, but we actually have gone globally. We do a lot of work with all of our Native businesses all around the U.S. and all of our tribes across the U.S. And we also have a strong partnership and doing some work in Australia. But specifically in the United States, we have one of our tribes in the Texas area has reached out, and they are suffering from a very high unemployment rate. And they said, hey, we feel really isolated. And so they are really trying to transition their unemployment to self-employment. So we're working with them and trying to get them some workforce development. We've reached out to some of our state agencies, and they've really jumped in and are embracing, helping to create them some successful self-employed companies. So we're doing that here stateside, and then in addition, the administration is also was kind enough to give our organization funding so that we're able to bring over some First Nations businesses from Australia for the second time. And so we're doing some lessons learned with some of our tribal nations and kind of helping to create some opportunities and what our tribal nations have been able to do to overcome barriers. And so that is kind of having some impact in those shared stories.
So leading into that a little bit, you talk about the impact and not to underplay the extent and experience that you have. You know, being a business owner for 25 plus years, project management. How do you see those projects really starting to emerge in the work that you're doing? Some of the success stories that you shared with me about projects in Oklahoma or abroad.
And one of the great things that I think, at the time that we're in right now is, it's fortunate that our administration has really recognized that our tribal communities have really been lacking for so long. And so they've really been, are given a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of funding that's going into our tribal communities. And so we're really able to, they're still a little bit segmented, and a lot of times they're isolated and they don't understand what opportunities are, what they can or can't do, and what's being done outside of the tribal communities. So we're able to come in and show them, hey, you've got this funding, and let's create these projects that you may not be aware, or let's take our non-tribal community experience and bring that in and kind of merge that.
I think that's an important part for people kind of on the outside of this arena to understand, is that being able to crack that nut and get into Native communities, Indigenous communities, Native serving populations, it takes that amount of trust and familiarity, and I've heard that pretty consistently throughout this conference, that when we're bridging those gaps and trying to even bring in new funding, new opportunities, there's still a level of mistrust or distrust that's there. And so it does take some time or intermediaries that will help understand what does tribal politics mean, and how does that affect the environment where you're trying to work. Thank you for sharing that, yeah. One of the things that we've talked about is looking at some of the trends that we're seeing in the social, political, or technological space and how that's driving in our Native communities. And I think that what I'm seeing a lot of is a concerted effort to create regenerative economies. And so there was a great plan I saw earlier with a multi-use building with businesses on the bottom level, apartments on top, and a way to create that economy that keeps the dollar generating in a community for over 7 times. How can we create those incubator spaces that entrepreneurs can use while also supporting the families and the children that need to go to school nearby? So those concepts are still healthy in Indian country, and there are several communities that are putting those together, but it does lack some of the funding. So it's exciting to be at a conference like this to hear from U.S. Bank or from other trust advisors or trust and foundations that this could be something that they're looking for as a possible opportunity. Because in some ways, and in many ways, I think the trend is that we're forgetting about Indian country as an opportunity. That they are vibrant. There is a lot of capital that's available for these communities and development. There's this discussion about the tax breaks that can be used for housing development. The 3 major issues that I'm seeing that are problems with Native communities are still food and water access, so that basic need of food and water access, housing, transportation. And so it's not dissimilar to what we see throughout the United States, but many of our communities are so far away from an urban setting, they're oftentimes forgotten. I think some of the trends socially that we've seen with like a Lily Gladstone and Killers of the Flower Moon and all of her success that she had recently, also other series that she's on. Culturally, we're thriving as Native communities and the pride that we have in those communities. And so being able to stay in that spotlight, and it was like that during pandemic. There was a lot of light of inequities shown on those communities that talked about what wasn't there and what the lacking was and how this community was getting left behind. We don't want that spotlight to go away now that we're past that. We still want that same attention to be paid towards the communities because there is a lot of revival and resurrection and reclamation that is taking place in these communities, but it also comes down to the funding. There's a great piece coming out of USET, which is the United South and Eastern Tribes. Kitka Carroll has put together a Native Marshall Plan, which really talks about the investment that it would take in these communities consistently over time in order to catch them up. But there is a lot of beautiful space that's wide open, and I know that these communities are open for business. Politically, having Deb Haaland in office during this administration, I can't say enough about how beneficial that has been for Indian country. The ICWA affirmation that recently came out of the Supreme Court over the past couple years, and even seeing a tribal community flex their sovereignty muscle and ban a governor from their reservation community in South Dakota. And so there are different pockets of very successful political activism taking place with Indian communities. Technology, we continue to lack a lot of that infrastructure to the communities, that final mile, getting it to where it needs to be, and then supporting the ACP, which has been a hot topic as of lately, to continue that program for internet. Locally, for those of you that are from the area, the Potawatomis are back in a lot of ways. My tribe, Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, recently got land back right outside of Chicago in DeKalb County. And so we're very excited to have that land back and see what opportunities that can bring us. So it's constantly moving and shifting landscape for Native communities. Rachel, when we're thinking about corporations, foundations, or external stakeholders, what do they most need to know about Indian country? How can they be good allies to support initiatives important to Indigenous populations? And can you share an example of those partnerships, best practices, and collaboration?
Sure, thank you. Bonjour, everyone, hello. There's a lot of ways that all of you here in this room, your companies, your foundations can support, but I think one main thing I would start with is just know that we are still here. Don't wait to call us until November for Native American Heritage Month. We're available 365 days a year. We are native 365 days a year. So that is one thing I just wanted to start with. But as far as what else you can do, you can learn about the tribes in your area. You can learn about the local tribes in your area. You can learn how many Indigenous people do you have working for you. What do those demographics look like? What are you doing to recruit more Native Americans, Indigenous people to come and work for you? What are you doing to expand that Indigenous pipeline in your company? Those are just a couple of things. I think that, again, just educating yourself, your company, having people come in to speak about what we do, what maybe tribes in your area can come in and talk about what, their journey, what their needs are in their community. Some great examples of working for AT&T. I've been with the company for going on 24 years. I'm president of IK for short. We're an employee resource group, but we're also a 501c3. So we're a nonprofit that's created by Native employees and operated by Native employees. We've been around for 40 years. So probably in the last 6 to 7 years, I think we've made big strides. We've had to have just taken the stance of, we are going to be up there and talking and silent no more. We are here, and we've had some discussions with leadership at our company, with leaders in the community and where we have a footprint. And what we do is just let them know we're here. How can we help? We want to help. We want you to help our communities. And I think just building that relationship and that just giving them the opportunity to learn and to understand who we are and what is important to our people. And so some examples of just about some strides that AT&T has made, and I know other companies are pouring into communities as well, is we talked a little bit about connectivity, right? When COVID happened, we all knew there's a great need in other communities, such a great need in the Native American community. Connectivity really means everything in communities that are rural and tribal lands. Without that, we don't have the same advantages, the same opportunities. And so AT&T identified that, and we did have some discussions and they come to us as an ally, but also for us to consult and to be liaisons. And so I'm very proud of our company. They put in place 2 tribal liaisons, one in FirstNet, which is a subsidiary of AT&T, and then in California, where there's 109 tribes in California. And so we've built relationships with tribes. The company has made a big effort to go out there and find out what they can do. Some of the things they've done more recently is build connected learning centers in two areas in California, Northern California, Southern California, and there's more on the home front. We did build one also in Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. And what those connected learning centers do is provide fiber at no cost, fiber services, Wi-Fi at no services, 15 computers. And so they are loaded with programming, educational programs, but also whatever the tribe needs. And some of them wanted language and cultural preservation on there for their children. So, and now the communities have a place where they can go where they may not have had service before. And I'll finish with one other example. In Kenwood, Oklahoma, more recently, last year, I was honored to be part of the first phone call that came out of Kenwood. This community in Cherokee Nation did not have a cell service, and so they would have to drive 10 miles to get a signal. Imagine if we had to drive 10 miles to call 911, to call our doctor, to check on our family members. So these are the kinds of things I think people don't realize, but this is something that AT&T identified, worked with the Cherokee Nation, together built a cell tower in Kenwood. And so again, it was just an honor to be able to be with some of our leaders to take that first phone call from Chief Hoskins out of Kenwood. So lots of great things, but I would say the main thing you can do is just, again, learn about the Native community around you and invest in us. You invest as much as you invest in other communities, invest in us. We are the first people of this nation, and we're still here, and we need your help.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd lean into that a little bit.
Sure.
Those conversations with leadership, have they always been easy?
No, sometimes it's having some tough conversations, but a lot of it is education. You don't know what you don't know until you're educated.
Expand
right?
on that a little bit.
So there's been, there's opportunities to recruit, right? At different, there's different opportunities, whether it's a conference or whether it's a college fair or something. And so there were some opportunities that we didn't see the company taking advantage of. And so when we had that conversation with them and explained to them, this is why you need to be there. We will work hand in hand with you. And we identified there is a Native American Student Association in multiple universities across the nation. Our people don't only go to tribal universities or tribal colleges. And so all we asked was that they invest in the same way that they invest in other communities. And once they heard that, they understood, and they have invested in us. There's a couple of other things they do. I'll just to add to that. In talking with them and letting them know what's important, MMIW, if you don't know what MMIW is, it's Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. It's a crisis across the country. That is acknowledged or honored on May the 5th. And so one of the things we did in partnership with another organization was turn the skyline red in Dallas. And so this is the third year, and I'm proud to say that we asked the company, explained to them, and they lit our AT&T building at our headquarters in Dallas red on May the 5th. That may seem small to some people, but it's very meaningful to our community to know that a big company like AT&T is recognizing and honoring something that not many people know about. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So as we're closing, one of the closing ideas, or we want to talk about, looking backwards in order to understand what brought us here, but also where do we go from here? So how does our unique Indigenous history inform our perspective on the future of tribal communities, and how does it inform social responsibility?
So I think it's just kind of going off of what Rachel said. It's important that our history. Some people may not like it. It's parts of it that they try to forget about. We like to learn from it. Let's not forget about our history. That's where we came from. We were the first people. There's a lot of obstacles that have been put in our place, but we've made it through. We're going to continue to make it through. Like Rachel said, we're still here. We're going to continue to be here. So, we want to have a seat at the table. We want to be at the table, and we want to be eating with everyone else. So we want to be, we don't want to be forgotten about.
Yeah. I'll add to that. I'm also recently appointed to council on for my tribe. So I'm a councilwoman for my tribe, and we remember our history, but we also build on the resilience of our ancestors, and that's what we continue to plan for 7 generations ahead. And we just take that with us and know that together we can do more for our people.
I completely agree. Thank you for that. And I think in closing, that idea of the planning for this seventh generation is something that is a consistent thread through most Native and Indigenous communities. And what I'd like to share with a lot of the young people that I've worked with is that we are also somebody's seventh generation.
Yes.
So we are the product of 7 generations ago, those family members that had prayed for us, that had fought for us, that were at war for us, or that were living for us then. They wanted us to have good lives now. They may not have had any idea about the level of technology or the things to come or richness, but it was to be healthy, to be loved, to be in community. And those are the types of values that we are really sharing, that we want to make sure we share with all people, but those are our Indigenous values that we want to continue to share. And I'll leave you with three things. So if you don't think that a president has ever used the power of the military to ignore a Supreme Court order, there's a story called The Trail of Tears with Andrew Jackson. If you don't think that government-imposed birth control has been an issue, then you may not be familiar with the programs that sterilized Native American women through the 60s and 70s. And if you don't think there is an element of duality to leadership, then you might not know about Abraham Lincoln's Dakota 38. And so all of this is American history, and all of this is our history. But our history is also now. So please join us thanking my guests and being good partners, and we look forward to talking with you any chance we get. Thank you.